What if your deepest desires weren't really yours? Have you ever stopped mid-act, heart still racing, hand still tingling, and wondered, why did I do that? Not the surface-level reason, not because I was bored or because I needed relief, but the deeper reason, the strange pull that seemed to come from nowhere, the emptiness that somehow remained afterward, the loneliness that didn't go away. We live in a world that sells desire like candy. Everything from fast food to fast pleasure is designed to distract you from your soul. But what if behind that normal, hidden little act of masturbation, there was a whole universe of symbols, of secrets, of stories you've been carrying since childhood? Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who saw the human being as more than flesh and instinct, believed something radical. That nothing we do is meaningless, that even our most private, instinctual behaviors contain a message. So what if I told you that masturbation could be a mirror, not dirty, not shameful, but sacred, and that every time you feel the pull, every time you reach for pleasure in the dark, it might actually be your soul trying to speak to you, not to condemn you, but to reveal you, to wake you up, to show you something you've been trying to forget, something ancient, something beautiful, something painful. But first, let's pause here, because where we're going isn't just about sex, it's about soul, and it begins right here with this act and the story behind it you never knew you were telling, a whisper from the soul or a scream. When I first started thinking about this video, I knew it couldn't just be another shallow discussion about, is masturbation good or bad? We've heard enough of those. I didn't want to preach, and I definitely didn't want to moralize. What I wanted was to understand what's really going on when that quiet urge shows up, when the need bubbles up from deep inside and demands to be released. Because I've felt it, and I know you have too. You see, this isn't a video about controlling desire. It's about decoding it. It's about asking, what's hiding beneath that need? What's pushing from within? Is it pain, longing, a memory? Carl Jung believed our actions are never isolated. He called it the unconscious, the silent sea underneath our everyday thoughts. And in that sea live all the parts of you you've forgotten, all the shame, all the fantasies, all the wounds. This video is a journey through that sea. We're not going to label you. We're going to see you. We're going to explore what masturbation might actually mean when it becomes a pattern. When it happens without thought, when it stops being pleasure and starts becoming escape. If you've ever asked yourself, why do I keep doing this? Or why do I feel empty afterward? This video is for you. Let's walk together into the unseen, not to fix, but to listen, to uncover what your desire might really be trying to say. The psychic energy beneath the surface. There's a moment, right before the act, where time almost slows. Your body leans forward, your breath shortens, and your mind narrows, like a camera lens zooming into something you can't quite name. But you feel it, a tension that wants to break, and we're taught to call it sexual. But Carl Jung would have called it something else entirely. He called it libido, not in the Freudian sense, not just sex drive, but as the life energy behind all human motivation, that craving, that need to release. It's not just about pleasure, it's psychic energy. It's the soul, pulsing, and when it doesn't have a clear direction, when your dreams feel stuck, your creativity clogged, your relationships distant, that energy doesn't just vanish, it redirects, somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, like masturbation. I've felt it myself, the rush of energy with nowhere to go, the loneliness that doesn't look lonely, but feels like reaching out for something inside myself. You ever open the fridge 4 times in a row, knowing full well there's nothing new in there? That's libido too, searching, grasping, wandering without a purpose. Masturbation, in this sense, becomes the default path. It's fast, it's private, it asks nothing of you. And yet, it takes something from you. This isn't a guilt trip. It's a wake-up call, because when you repeat a behavior without thought, without presence, Jung would say you're no longer the driver. You've handed the keys to the unconscious. And the unconscious, it doesn't care about your calendar. It doesn't respect your goals. It just wants to be heard. There was an old philosopher, not Jung, who said, "He who cannot command himself must obey." And that's the uncomfortable truth here. You're either directing your energy or being directed by it. In my own life, I noticed that the times I fell into compulsive masturbation were the same times I felt lost, creatively blocked, disconnected from purpose. My dreams sat in the corner like unopened mail, and I mistook release for relief. But relief without growth, that's just repetition in disguise. There's even something oddly ritualistic about it, a pattern so familiar it starts to feel like prayer, except instead of ascending, it loops back into the same craving, the same emptiness. Jung wrote that psychic energy must be used or it turns inward and stagnates. And when it stagnates, it doesn't die. It mutates into sadness, into confusion, into addiction, like water with no outlet. It floods places it doesn't belong. And sex, well, sex is one of the most obvious, accessible doors it finds. Funny thing, even old sailors used to say, a man too long at sea starts to see mermaids. That's not mythology, that's libido, looking for a face. And here's where the first light breaks through. You're not broken, you're overflowing. Your soul is carrying more energy than it knows what to do with. And if you don't point that river somewhere meaningful, it will carve its own path, often in the dark. So the next time the urge rises, don't just ask, do I want to masturbate? Ask, what part of me wants to move? Where is my energy trying to go? It's not about shame, it's about stewardship. Because every drop of that tension you feel, it's not just arousal, it's potential. And when you treat it as sacred, you begin to understand what Jung meant, that the libido, left unconscious, becomes chaos, but channeled with intention. It becomes creation, even a quiet revolution inside yourself, the shadow and shame behind the curtain. You know that feeling after it's over. When the room goes quiet, when the heat fades, and all that's left is a kind of emptiness. I've felt it, and I know I'm not alone. There's something about the aftermath that no one talks about. A hush, a hollow, sometimes even a whisper of guilt, and we're left wondering, why does something that feels so natural feel so wrong afterward? Enter Jung's concept of the shadow. The shadow is everything inside you that you've learned to hide. Every desire, every impulse, every fantasy you were told was ugly or shameful. It's the part of you you pretend doesn't exist, but it doesn't disappear. It waits. From the time we're young, we're told things. Don't touch yourself. That's disgusting. Good girls don't do that. Real men don't need to, and we absorb it. We internalize the rules, and we create masks, respectable ones, smiling ones. But underneath those masks, the shadow grows, and masturbation, especially when it's rushed, compulsive, or hidden, can become its playground. I used to think I was just blowing off steam, but sometimes it felt more like I was trying to quiet something loud, something wounded. Here's the odd thing, the more I denied it, the stronger it became, like a child banging on a locked door, and Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Ever hear that weird little voice after? The one that says, why did you do that again? That's not always guilt. Sometimes it's the shadow trying to get your attention. Old school wisdom once said, the devil you ignore owns you. It's true in psychology, too, because the shadow doesn't vanish by repression. It just finds sneakier ways to act out. Odd fact, in ancient Greek culture, priests believed that repressed sexual energy turned into ghost-like entities, spirits that would whisper to men in their sleep. They weren't far off, We don't call them spirits anymore. We call them impulses. I once read a study that said, people are more likely to masturbate when they're anxious than when they're aroused. Let that sink in. This isn't about lust. It's about coping, and the shadow is a master of disguise. Sometimes, masturbation isn't about desire at all. It's about sadness, or loneliness, or fear. It's about filling a void, or distracting from a pain too deep to name. You're not disgusting. You're hurting, and your shadow is trying to speak. But the language of the unconscious isn't words. It's patterns. It's impulses. It's that strange magnet, pulling you to repeat what you swore you'd stop. The key isn't to judge it, it's to listen. Jung said, confronting the shadow is the work of the few, because it requires bravery. To sit with what you hate, to love what you were taught to fear. So the next time the urge strikes, and you feel it's not just physical, pause, ask, is this desire, or is this a wound asking for air? Is this pleasure, or is this pain in disguise? The shadow isn't here to ruin you. It's here to reveal you, to give you a second chance to reclaim what you buried. And when you shine light on the places you've long feared, you don't destroy them, you heal them, one awkward, sacred moment at a time. Complexes. When the past hijacks the present, there's this eerie feeling sometimes when you finish and you don't even remember making the decision to start, as if your body moved before you gave it permission. Your hand reached out, your thoughts blurred, and then it was done. Fast, mechanical, almost robotic. Ever had that moment where you wonder, was that really me? Because it didn't feel like it. According to Carl Jung, you might have just been hijacked, not by a demon, but by something very real, a complex. In Jungian psychology, a complex is like a little pocket of emotion, memory, and belief, all wrapped around an old experience, usually one that hurt. A breakup, a rejection, a shameful moment as a teenager, the time someone laughed at your curiosity, the scolding when you got caught. It sticks, and the brain, bless its efficiency, tucks that moment away in a little drawer. But the drawer doesn't stay shut forever. One day, something small, a scent, a scene, a feeling of loneliness touches that drawer, and click, it opens, the complex wakes up, and it wants to feel safe again. That's when the pattern kicks in. You don't want to think, you just want to escape. Fast. So you reach for the thing that once gave you comfort, the screen, the fantasy, the act, and for a brief moment, the complex is soothed. But you feel like you've vanished. I used to think I lacked discipline, that I was weak. But the truth is, I wasn't failing. I was reenacting. A wounded part of me, frozen in time, was pulling the strings, like a ghost puppeteer whispering, just one more time. It'll make it better. But it never did. Odd psychological fact. A study once found that people are more likely to engage in habitual sexual behavior after social rejection, not during joy, not after celebration, but after pain, because pain remembers, and the complex replays the only comfort it knows. This is where the work begins. Jung said, the complex has a tendency to behave like a separate personality. Let that sink in. You're not crazy, you're crowded. There are younger versions of you still living inside you. And when they get triggered, they reach for what they remember. So what do? You stop demonizing the act and start asking the deeper question. What am I trying not to feel right now? Rejection, loneliness, the sense that you don't matter, that no one sees you. Whatever it is, it's not just a thought. It's a wound. And masturbation, in those moments, becomes the bandage. But a bandage doesn't heal what it covers. Healing begins with attention, that impulse you feel, the drive to act before you think. It's not evil, it's a signal. It's the adolescent in you crying out. Remember me, I never got to speak. I never got to feel safe. And the beautiful part, once you become aware of the complex, it loosens its grip. That's not theory, that's experience. There was a time I felt enslaved to it. That post-lonely scroll into pleasure, that repetitive loop that always ended with me, more empty than before. But the moment I started naming the feeling, sorrow, fear, disappointment, the spell broke. Not overnight, but slowly. The hand paused, the mind stayed awake, and the desire transformed from compulsion to a conversation. You don't fight a complex by force. You outgrow it by compassion. And every time you stop and feel what you were afraid to feel, you grow. So the next time you feel taken over, don't punish yourself. Just ask, whose pain is this? How old is this wound? And listen, because inside, every complex is a forgotten story. And the moment you hear it, it stops repeating. The fantasy partner within you. Close your eyes for a second and think about this. When you masturbate, who are you with? I don't mean the person in the video or the character in the daydream. I mean the image, that presence you feel yourself drawn to. Is it someone real, someone from your past, an ideal figure, a stranger, or just a feeling? Because even when you're alone, you're never really alone in that moment. There's a relationship happening. And Jung had a name for this mysterious internal presence. The Anima and the Animus. The Anima is the inner feminine inside a man. The Animus, the inner masculine inside a woman. They are the unconscious counterparts, shaped by every experience you've had with the opposite sex, especially during your formative years. Your mother's tone, your father's silence, the lover who left, the teacher who noticed, the one who didn't. These images don't just fade, they become archetypes, living blueprints inside the soul, and they influence your sexual energy more than you realize. Ever wonder why certain fantasies repeat themselves? Why some emotional dynamics, domination, adoration, rejection, seem to always creep back into your private moments? It might not be you, it might be your anima, or animus, trying to be seen. Jung believed these figures hold the key to our individuation, our becoming whole. But when wounded or distorted, they twist our desires. We begin to project them onto others, or recreate them in solitude. In my own experience, I found that during times of emotional neglect, I didn't crave sex. I craved witnessing, to be seen, to be touched, not physically, but inwardly. And so, the fantasies reflected that hunger, an imaginary partner who finally understood, who listened, who made the ache bearable. But here's the strange twist. That partner wasn't someone else. It was a part of me, odd but true. In Japanese Shinto culture, there's a concept called tsukumogami, ordinary objects that become alive after 100 years. Jung would say our inner images become like that. When ignored long enough, they take on a life of their own. And often, during masturbation, we meet them, not physically, but symbolically. That ideal lover, she's your anima, may be neglected, may be misunderstood. That dominating figure you surrender to, may be your animus, tired of being silenced. Asserting power in fantasy. This isn't about sexual orientation or fantasy shaming. It's about curiosity. Because once you notice the patterns, you begin to ask deeper questions. What do I truly seek in this image? Is it intimacy, power, safety, reassurance? And that's when the transformation begins. Instead of being pulled into the fantasy blindly, you start to converse with it. You start to see the unmet needs behind the mask. When your anima is unhealed, you may idealize or degrade women. When your animus is wounded, you might mistrust or romanticize men. And so, masturbation becomes more than just release. It becomes a stage where these inner figures perform their scripts again and again, until someone backstage you finally walks up and says, "Hey, I see you, but I'm not you. Let's rewrite this story." Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And that applies here, too. When you meet your inner partner consciously, you change, they change, and the fantasies begin to shift from compulsion to exploration, from projection to presence. So the next time you're drawn inward, pause, breathe, ask, who am I connecting with? What part of myself needs love now? Because even in the silence of your room, even in that most personal, hidden moment, you're not just releasing, you're relating. And when you relate with awareness, even masturbation can become a mirror of your soul's deepest hunger, not for sex, but for self-integration, sublimation, channeling sexual energy into purpose. You know that fire in your belly, that buzz under your skin, the one that makes you restless, makes you want to do something, anything, just to let it out. That's libido, but not just sex drive. Carl Jung saw it as the fuel of life itself. The same energy that drives you to touch yourself can also write symphonies, build businesses, raise children, and climb mountains. The question isn't whether the energy is there. It is. The question is, where is it going? Because if it doesn't go outward into purpose, it loops inward into habit. That's where sublimation comes in. Sublimation is the process of transforming raw desire into higher action. It's not repression, it's redirection. It's turning that urge into movement, turning craving into creation. Odd historical fact. Leonardo da Vinci, who rarely acted on his sexual urges, was said to have channeled his sexual energy into his obsessive creativity. His sketchbooks filled with inventions, anatomy, and art were his release. Now, I'm not saying you need to paint the Mona Lisa, but I am saying you already have that fire. What are you doing with it? There were times in my life when I felt trapped in a cycle. Wake up, feel flat, scroll, release, regret, repeat. I thought I was addicted, but I wasn't. I was unused. My energy had nowhere to go. My soul was screaming, give me a mission, and I was giving it a screen. One day, I tried something different. I felt the urge, but instead of reaching for distraction, I sat, I closed my eyes, and I breathed. And that same tension, that same sexual pressure started to rise in my chest. I picked up a pen. I started writing. What came out wasn't great. It was raw, but it was real. It came from me, not just through me. That was the first time I truly felt what Jung meant when he said, when libido is withheld, it doesn't disappear, it ferments, transforms, and rises. It's not about never masturbating again. It's about choosing what to do with your energy. Sometimes that might mean making love. Sometimes it might mean dancing in your kitchen at midnight. Sometimes it might mean pouring everything into a song, a prayer, a vision board, a business plan. Because the body seeks release, but the soul seeks expression. And when you find your outlet a real one, the compulsion softens, the grip loosens. Pleasure stops being the only option, because now you have purpose. In older spiritual traditions, this was always known. Tantric monks believed that sexual energy, when cultivated consciously, could awaken divine awareness, not through denial, but through devotion. And Jung, he saw sublimation as essential to individuation, to becoming who you were meant to be. So here's your invitation. The next time you feel that urge bubbling up, don't shame it, don't repress it, don't even run from it. Just pause and ask, what can I build with this? Where can I channel it? What part of me is begging to be born? Because when you learn to ride that current, instead of drowning in it, you become powerful, focused, alive, and suddenly, what once felt like a trap becomes a doorway to art, to love, to truth, and most of all, to you, beyond pleasure. What emptiness tries to tell you? There's a strange moment right after the rush. The breathing slows, the tension dissolves, and then silence. Maybe you reach for your phone, maybe you roll over, maybe you feel okay, but somewhere, deep underneath, there's a flicker, a whisper. Sometimes it sounds like regret, other times, like absence. It's not always dramatic, just that small, Heavy pause, like something was supposed to happen, but didn't. A promise, broken in secret. Carl Jung once said, "All neurosis is a substitute for legitimate suffering." And when I first read that, I paused, because it rang a little too true. Could it be that this urge, this act, this private ritual, wasn't about the body at all? Maybe it was trying to cover something deeper, a longing for connection, for warmth, for meaning. See, when you don't give libido a destination, it circles back as repetition. When you don't give the soul space to speak, it whispers through discomfort. That emptiness, it's not a punishment, it's an invitation. In fact, old Sufi mystics believed the moment after release was a sacred one, the soul wide open, vulnerable, ready to be heard. And what do most of us do in that moment? We shut the laptop, we clean up, we scroll. But if you stay just a second longer, if you sit in the stillness and listen, you might hear the truth behind the urge. Maybe what you really wanted was to feel close to someone, even if it was just to yourself. Maybe you craved being held, not physically, but emotionally, to feel wanted, to feel seen. And you thought that climax would give it to you, but pleasure without presence. It's like sugar without substance, sweet, but it fades fast, and the hunger returns. I've been there too many times, caught in the cycle of touch without tenderness, action without awareness. And over time, I realized what I truly needed wasn't escape. It was integration, the weaving together of my craving, my sadness, my wonder, my need, into one honest moment. I started asking new questions after the act. Instead of running from the silence, I sat in it, and I'd ask, what am I really longing for? What did I hope to find? What part of me still feels alone? Sometimes the answers came, sometimes they didn't. But even the asking made a difference. It turned my shame into sincerity, my habit into healing. Jung believed the soul repeats what the ego refuses to face. So maybe that recurring emptiness isn't failure. It's a message, and the message is simple. There's more. There's more to your desire than friction, more to your loneliness than silence, more to your release than relief. Because behind every urge is a voice that says, "Please, know me, please, don't look away again." And the beautiful truth, when you start listening, not rushing, not fixing, just listening, the cycle starts to break. You don't become immune to desire. You become intimate with it. You don't run from the fire. You warm your hands by it. And slowly, what once felt like a secret shame becomes a sacred space, a space where you meet yourself fully, finally, honestly. Desire is not the enemy. Forgetting yourself is, so much has been said, about urges, about energy, about shame. But if there's one thread tying it all together, it's this: you are not broken. You are becoming. Carl Jung never asked us to repress. He asked us to reflect, to bring what's unconscious into the light. Because it's there, in that light, that healing begins. If you've ever wondered why you keep returning to that moment, to the act, to the loneliness, to the flicker of guilt afterward, know this: it's not about the act. It's about your awareness, about the stories your body holds, the memories your mind won't name, the longings your soul whispers through desire. Your libido is not your enemy. It's your compass. But a compass only works when you look at it, when you listen. Whether you continue to masturbate or not is not the question. The question is, are you present with yourself when you do? Do you honor what you feel afterward? Are you using your energy to escape or to evolve? The real journey isn't away from desire. It's into it, to see where it leads, to ask who's there with you, and to make peace with the truth that you are more than your patterns, more than your impulses, more than the labels the world gave you in secret. You're not a machine of urges. You're a mystery of meaning, a being in bloom. And every time you pause, reflect, and listen, you come home, not to perfection, but to presence. So take a breath, Take a moment, and when the next urge comes, don't run, don't judge. Just ask, what is this energy asking of me today? And let that question lead you toward wholeness. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope today you find a quiet corner to continue that silent conversation with yourself. And don't forget to subscribe. There are many more videos to come about dreams, the shadow, and the hidden corners of the soul waiting for you ahead.